Hey everyone, RogueGold here, and today I want to do part 1 of my 2 videos planned for a deep dive speculation of my thoughts on the upcoming Year 3 content for The Division 2. I recently did a video talking about how there appears to be more content coming than just the one game mode and player progression stuff that the devs confirmed, but for now I just want to specifically speculate on what has been fully confirmed in that post that I just mentioned. So part 2, which is the player progression stuff, will be coming probably in a few days, but today, as you could probably tell by the title, is the game mode. So let's just dive right into it. I want to start by mentioning something that was in a pretty obviously fake leak the other day. It was covered on Epic Slayer's channel. I'm sure some other people talked about it as well, but that was the first place I saw it. So I will leave a link to that video in the description if you care to go watch it. I can pretty much guarantee that the leak that he covers in that is fake. It was from Reddit. There was another one that came out the week before, and so both of them are pretty clearly fake in my opinion, but the game mode that this person claims is coming for this update, I do actually think would be really sweet to see in the game. I doubt Massive would ever do it, but I just wanted to talk about it because if they ever considered it, I think it would be super awesome. I'd never considered it myself. Basically, what this person was saying in that post that the game mode would be was something like a Friday the 13th with hunters and agents. Now, if you've never played that game, if you don't know what that is, it's kind of similar to Dead by Daylight, where it's primarily a PvP mode, but if they wanted to do a PvE one, they could, but we'll get to that. Basically, one person, or what this person says is 2 people would be hunters, and then 10 people would be agents, and it's basically like the agents have an objective to win. They have to find some sort of file and extract it or whatever. Meanwhile, the hunters are super OP. They have much more abilities, gear, higher weaponry, whatever, than the agents do coming in. And their whole goal is to wipe out all the agents. So it's 2v10, but the 2 is heavily skewed, and the hunters would have a lot more gear, whereas the agents are a little bit underpowered. They can use pre-made builds, at least what this person claims, but then they can't switch their stuff during the match. They can't switch their skills, stuff like that. So I think it would be really awesome, again, unless they did a version where you had an AI hunter or a PvE version of this game mode, I wouldn't see Massive doing it. But as a PvP player, that just sounds so awesome. Like I said, I never considered something like that coming to the game, but now that I've thought about it, I so wish it was here, because can you just imagine you're playing a game mode with your friends all day where 2 of you are randomly selected as hunters and the rest are agents, and it's just a free-for-all in this area? So cool. But that's just that. I wanted to mention that. Again, I don't think that's very realistic, and I don't see that coming. I don't think that leak has much credibility, but again, I just think it'd be really cool. So before I talk about what I think is the most realistic thing we'll see as an introduced game mode, I quickly wanted to touch on what I would like to see personally, but is probably less realistic in the grand scheme of things, and that is something with the essence, intensity, and speed of Gambit from Destiny. So if you're unaware, Gambit is a PvPvE mode where 2 teams are racing to complete the same objective of summoning and killing a boss. Meanwhile, both teams are given the option every, so often, periodically, to invade the other team's world and disrupt their progress. Now, personally, I feel like this is the kind of energy that the Division 2 needs right now in this new game mode. It needs something that has high intensity and more action. I think a lot of people didn't vibe with the summit, for several reasons, but one of them, just because it wasn't that exciting or different from what we can already play in the game. Sure, it's good for farming in its own regard, and the randomization and the replayability to a degree is nice, but it doesn't offer you some sort of like new experience, whereas I feel something that, I don't want to say copies, but borrows that essence from something like Gambit in Destiny could kind of do that. So I've shared this idea as early back as I think during year 1. I said this would be a cool thing. I kind of thought about it back then. And more recently, I think I went into it on my proximity coverage podcast. I'm going to lay it out here again because I'm sure many of you haven't seen those things. So yeah, let me just lay it out and I'll see what you guys think. I'm pretty curious on this one. So basically, I think a convoy defending game mode would be really sweet. The basic idea is that a team of 4 defends a mobile convoy across a certain amount of distance, and that you're constantly being attacked or delayed by waves of enemies who can kind of strategize and set up traps ahead of you, and are ultimately trying to slow your progress. And then where the Gambit theme comes in is that I think you could have a PvP mode, and of course they would have to have a PvE one so as not to upset a large portion of the player base. The PvE one would just be your team against the AI. You're trying to deliver this convoy as fast and efficiently as possible for a higher score, which would probably equate to higher or more loot in the end. But the PvP one would see 2 teams defending, the same convoys on either like mirror tracks or equally distanced tracks, so that there's no advantage given to one team or the other. But meanwhile, if you're in the PvP one, you could send some of your team over to go and kill or disrupt the other team, as often as you please. But I think the intensity would come in where there's a mix of PvP and PvE, because you can send players to go and attack the other team's convoy, but then that leaves yours more vulnerable. If the goal is to reach the finish line before the other team, leaving your convoy with only 2 to 3 people as opposed to all 4 people means that the attacking AI are going to slow you down even more. And if they can, I feel like it would be cool if they could go ahead and lay traps down ahead of you, kind of like the Ambusher faction does now, just in the open world. If they can do that, then you'd have, and you're, sending people to go attack the other team, then you'd have less people to send ahead as scouts to disarm those traps. So it becomes a balancing act and kind of a strategy game of how many people do we keep at our convoy, how many people do we send ahead, how many people do we try and send to disrupt the other team, what sort of builds do we do for each of these roles. I think it could be really cool. And I imagine if you die, whether it's in the PvE or PvP version of it, you'd have a delayed respawn or something similar to the Dark Zone, so that your progress would actually get halted and pushed back a little bit by the enemies. Now, if they had resources to make entirely new areas, and again, I don't know the full extent of how much Ubisoft Bucharest is helping out Massive in developing this content, so I don't know if new areas for this game mode is feasible or not, but if they could, I think it would be cool to see some of this mode in some DC suburbs or park areas or neighborhoods, having to clear out individual houses or different structures in your parks or something where they have sniper setup and stuff. That could be really cool. If not, I'm sure they could use instanced parts of DC and some of the streets that would work fine. Maybe they'd have to clear some of the dumpsters or overturned cars or whatever. But especially some of those areas, I think above, where the White House is, to the north of that a little bit, there are a lot of wide streets and cool areas they could use there. So they could certainly work it into DC if they didn't want to make entirely new areas. But yeah, overall, that's my idea. That's the one I've thrown out for this game for, like I said, almost a year and a half now. I just think it would be a lot of fun. It would bring a lot of replayability. Plus, it would give both the PvE and the PvP crowd new stuff to do, which I feel like should be the ultimate goal for this update if they want to truly please the player base as much as they can. But unfortunately, like I said, I don't really see them doing that. And so let me share what I think is probably more realistic, which is going to sound a bit disappointing, but just given what we've seen so far with Division 2, this is what I'm more realistically led to believe. Let's hope they prove me wrong. But I think more realistically, we're probably going to see some sort of a more traditional, methodical, and PvE-focused mode, coming with this TU13 or whatever the update will be called. Maybe, / hopefully it'll be something a little larger in scale than the Summit or the Underground. There'll be hopefully some more stuff involved, some more intricacies and uniqueness and just scale to it, I guess. I'd love to see something where it's a bit more expansive and it has its own reward structure or unique vendors or something like that. I don't know. I don't really know what type of mode it might be. Maybe something similar to Destiny's Battlegrounds they have currently going on. I don't mean to make this a Destiny reference video, but this is just some point of reference stuff to point out that I think could be possibly related, where you have to drop into a zone and you have to complete a few sub-objectives before you unlock a boss fight. That sounds kind of like a bounty, but I would picture it being more involved. I really don't know. There are a lot of directions they could take this new game mode, but like I said, given the track record we've seen for the Division 2's development so far, I think some sort of more traditional PvE mode is more likely what we're going to see. I hope they prove me wrong, but again, I don't want to, try and say we're going to see something that's just not realistic to see. So right now, given what we know, given what we've seen in the past, that's what I'm going to predict as the most likely game mode we are going to see coming later this year in 2021. So yeah, guys, I think that is going to wrap it up for my speculation video today about the upcoming game mode for Year 3 content. Just to recap, I gave my thoughts on a game mode idea that was given in a leak that I think is pretty much false, but the game mode itself I think could be really cool for the game. I don't see it happening, but I just wanted to comment on it. I gave my thoughts on what I'd like to see, which is a Gambit-style mode from Destiny in the form of a resource convoy mode. Again, I don't really see them doing that, but I still think it would be really cool. And then I talked about what I think would be the most likely mode that we will probably see later in the year, which is a more traditional PvE focused game mode for the game. So thank you all so much for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and be sure to subscribe with notifications on so you can be updated every time I upload. Let me know your thoughts on my ideas here down in the comments below. Do you agree with my assessment that the most likely mode we'll see later in the year is probably a PvE focused one? Or do you think it's possible that we'd see something like that leak outlined, like a hunters versus agents type of deal? I think it would be super sick, but again, I just don't see them doing it. Maybe, I hope I'm proved wrong. but I just don't think so. Or do you like my idea for a Gambit-style resource convoy or other type mode? Do you think that has any potential to come in the game or not? I'm very curious what you all think about those different ideas. But yeah, everyone, thanks again for watching. Have a wonderful day, and until next time, guys, RogueGold out.